Hello and welcome to Farmers After Hours Financial Fundamentals. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. My name is Kate Keel and I work with the Michigan Farm Bureau family of companies and I'm pleased to partner with Greenstone Farm Credit Services. Amber, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kate. My name is Amber Eklund. I'm the PR specialist for Greenstone Farm Credit Services. So my role is helping share Greenstone's voices and getting the word out about everything we do for farmers. I also help plan a lot of the different events, our YBSF for our Young Beginning Small Farmer programming, and then helping with a lot of different sponsorships and organizations that we support.
Thanks so much, Amber. We're excited to bring you this financial fundamentals series. As such, this is the 8th week of the series, and we're wrapping up with our Ask the Experts panel. These folks each provided 20-minute mini sessions diving deeper into financial content for you all to view available on our YouTube page. With that, I'll go ahead and let these folks introduce themselves, starting with Sarah. Go ahead and take the floor.
All right. Thanks, Kate. I'm Sarah Chattels. I work in the Schoolcraft branch at Greenstone Farm Credit Services. I'm a senior financial services officer. I've been in the role with the portfolio that I have with traditional farmers since 2012, and I worked for Greenstone since 2007. I guess my role, the senior financial services officer, that's a fancy name for saying I'm a loan officer and I work with farmers, particularly full-time farmers, some part-time farmers if enough of their income comes from farming operations. So that's my role, to help farmers, from the young farmer to the larger farmer that's more established. And we see an array of financials and people in a lot of different spots with their financial planning and resources.
All right. Does that mean I'm up, Kate? My name is Michael Mcewen. I'm with MKP, or Mcewen and Cry. So we are a business advisory and CPA firm located just south of Grand Rapids. So my brother and I, it's a family business as well. So my brother and I are partners here at the firm. We've got just under 20 of us here at the firm now, and specialize in, a little bit more kind of blue collar focus. So we support manufacturing, construction, and agriculture. Agriculture actually accounts for about 30% of our client base. So I grew up on a farm, and I still farm today. Actually, I cut out today and spent my day farming. A couple of breakdowns, so it wasn't terribly successful. But I farmed with my dad and 3 brothers, and we all have off-farm careers, but it's a great hobby and a great way to raise a family. So I really enjoy doing it. Here at the firm, I specialize, in a little bit of a generalist, but in addition to all things tax planning and compliance, work on the financial advisory side as well. So that's me.
All right, thanks. My name is Molly Woods, and I am the director of the Michigan State University Product Center. And the Product Center was established in 2003 as a center for innovation in especially value-added agriculture. It was established by Dr. Chris. But we work with agriculture, food businesses, and the natural resources sector. Our bread and butter really is working with small developing businesses. We help them develop business plans, do market research, do a scan of just, the space they want to occupy in the marketplace and whether that's a good place for them. And then we also help them with some regulatory assistance if it's getting certified to be a retail food seller. We help with that. In addition, we have a food processing innovation center on campus that's targeted toward larger, what we'd call stage 2 companies that are hoping to expand a line or do some food science research. I came back to Michigan State University in May to this position. Prior to that, I worked for the tart cherry industry in the country, actually, as the manager of the Federal Marketing Order. I grew up on a farm in Illinois, corn and soybeans, but ended up working a lot with fruits and vegetables here in Michigan. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, Rich Dupke. I'm the traditional financial service officer in Greenstone's Monroe location. So it's a real similar job description there to what Sarah described. Help various farm operations sizes meet their lending needs. Started there out of MSC when I graduated there 3.5 years ago. Been there ever since. So I grew up on a family farm close to where I work here down in Monroe. About 1,500 acre cash crop corn and soybeans farm with some feeder cattle as well.
Hey everybody, my name is Chad Zager. I'm the third person in this panel that's a Greenstone employee. I'm our managing director of tax and accounting. So within Greenstone, we're primarily a lender, but we also offer financial services and the areas of tax return preparation, tax planning, record keeping, and payroll services. And our team is comprised of approximately 30 team members across Greenstone's footprint within Michigan and Wisconsin. So I've been with Greenstone since 2017 and worked in public accounting previous to that. So just about 20 years of experience in accounting related field.
Excellent. Thanks so much, panelists, for taking a few minutes to introduce yourselves to our viewers. Up next, if we could go ahead and take 2 or 3 minutes each, same order, to review the top 2 or 3 takeaways from each of your sessions. That would be fantastic. So folks have an idea of the content of the series. They can go back and watch what pieces are pertinent to them in their family farms. We'll start with you, Miss Sarah. Thanks so much for being the first one on the docket.
All right. Thank you, Kate. A couple things from what I talked about in my little snippet and what's important to me every day when somebody calls me or touches base and has a lending request. The best thing to do is to just tell us what's going on, what they have going on. And sometimes that is, you know, an actual request, and sometimes they're really getting things lined up because they know they have some goals, and that's okay too. I would say the most important things to bring to us is what your request is and where you're at in that process, so we kind of have an idea of a timeline, and are we doing imaginary numbers and trying to come up with scenarios, or we have a real life situation. And then to bring, you know, a projection of their income, historic earnings, tax returns, P&Ls, and then a balance sheet of where they are. That's really the nuts and bolts of what we need to get started on their financial picture and developing what they can afford, what makes sense, what works with our collateral and standards. So that's kind of the building blocks of everything else that we need to know.
And I'm going to pause there just so we have a hot second to say Sarah's presentation was about learning the lending process. So if each of you could sort of give a snippet as to what's the highlighted title of your mini session, that would be awesome. So it helps in that search effort for folks as they go back and view our YouTube videos. Thanks for taking the first shot, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Thanks for helping me.
Mike, you're muted, man.
Thank you. Sorry about that. My session, it probably had a nifty title that I've forgotten at this point, but it was preparing for tax season. And so, you know, the biggest point that I wanted to get through in my presentation was preparing for tax season isn't collecting a bunch of IRS documents or year-end documents, and it's a more takes a more concerted effort. So in order to be adequately prepared for tax season, you want to plan early, often, and I think it was kind of more, looking into the future. So early as in, it's very important to be in consultation with your advisory team, so your banker, your attorney, your CPA, when you're starting out a business or when you're acquiring a business or certain significant assets to a business. And then as far as often, that means being in communication with that advisory team throughout the year, as well as at year end, to establish a plan and to react to unusual circumstances, which we've had a lot of in 2020, and then having a more forward-looking plan. So making sure that we're taking advantage of historically low tax brackets that may change sooner rather than later, and planning for succession, estate planning, things like that. So looking at the big picture. So that was the main point I wanted to get across.
So the title of my session was Innovative Revenue Sources. And it was really an overview of how the Product Center works with a focus on farm-based businesses or agricultural-based businesses. And I tried to highlight two farms who had been successful in diversifying their business mix or diversifying what they were selling at the farm. In one case, they moved from being strictly an orchard to adding a retail space. In another, they were a meat processor who wanted to expand out from being 80% of their business was with one supplier, and then they expanded out to a variety of different businesses. And I really just talked about all the steps along that process where we help them. And then also talked a little bit about the vision of the Product Center, how we work with clients, how if you're interested in coming to work with us to explore maybe a new business idea or venture or expansion at your business, how that happens and what we can do, as well as some of the partners that we work with, including IMDARD, MEDC, and a few other folks.
Yep. So I covered the a real general balance sheets segment there. Went through basic understanding of what a balance sheet is, and then worked into how to complete it. Some of the biggest takeaways from mine, I think, in order to complete a balance sheet, you have to have a general understanding of what you're compiling there. So we broke that down for you, the different types of assets and liabilities, i.e. current or intermediate term or long term there. It's important to pick the right date to start your balance sheet from, one that coordinates maybe with your operations year end or your income statement, and then keep that date consistent going forward. Get a form of balance sheet that's comfortable for you. A lot of different blank forms out there, QuickBooks, lender provided, something that you come up with your own, something that you're comfortable with, and have an understanding of how it all flows together from a summary and into a schedule format there. And then have an idea of how some general ratios can be pulled off of your balance sheet, current ratio, current assets and current liabilities there, and then your overall owner equity being the two most important and basic that I think you can start off with.
My presentation was on best accounting practices. So I had a slide in there where I recapped and gave kind of a top 5 hit list of items. And the first one from that list was to separate your business from your personal transactions. So we'll see this quite a bit. And I think it's just for entrepreneurs, small businesses, it happens quite a bit that personal gets muddied up with your business transactions. And So the guidance here is to treat what you're doing, treat your operation like a business. Get separate bank accounts. If you're going to use credit cards, get a credit card. And you know, when you're purchasing something for the business, do it on your business accounts. If you're buying something personal, don't buy it on your business account. But if you do, you know, if you're in a bind, if you're at the store, and you know, vice versa, you only have your personal, you only have your business, identify those transactions and make sure you're pulling them out of wherever they weren't supposed to be. So as a tax return preparer, I can say that really helps from an efficiency standpoint when you get a clean set of books that represents only what's going on in a business and it doesn't have all your personal transactions in it. And I think too, from a management standpoint of your operations, another item that I had on my list was reviewing your financial performance. So, you know, when you're completing your accounting, take time to look at that and measure where you're at versus last year. Measure where you're at potentially versus a budget. And if you're following the first guideline or best practice I've provided, you've got a true representation of what's going on with your business. You're not looking at maybe financial results in your P&L and it's got a bunch of personal or family living transactions in there that may be misleading for actually how the operation's doing. So those would be the two you know, most significant ones out of my top 5.
Thanks so much, everyone, for that brief overview of the content you provided during our 7-week, first 6 weeks of the series in the mini sessions, excuse me. So this whole experience kicked off with a farmer panel where we had some farmer folks offer their experiences, and that's available on YouTube as well for you to view. This is our question and answer portion of the session. We have some folks who have joined us anonymously for the live version of this panel. And we'll be recording it for viewing later on. That being said, we haven't had any questions come in quite yet. So we'll go ahead and ask a couple questions of our panelists, and they can answer as they see fit. But one of them would be, if you had any advice to give folks who are really starting a new business, or who are relatively new to the farming industry, based on your individual areas of expertise, what are the top 2 things that you would recommend to them to do from the get-go?
I'll go.
Okay.
Oh. Sorry.
Okay.
I was just going to reiterate a point that I made earlier. I think that having kind of your advisory team, your support team on your side when you're stepping into making a big decision like that. So, you know, you probably know some of these people from other relationships you have, friends or family who have worked with maybe a CPA they really like, or an attorney. But I really think that it's important to you know, just have a quick call or sit down meeting with them, make sure it's someone that you feel like you can relate to and could have a good long-term business relationship with. So make sure you're identifying a good attorney, CPA or accountant, tax preparer, and likely a banker, and probably insurance. So yeah, that'd be my recommendation.
I would like to add something, Kate, just from our perspective, working with new clients or people who come to us with an idea. It's usually they have several ideas rather than just one, you know, of great ideas that they want to try out. And so we encourage them to take it one step at a time and identify their one best idea to work. And the other is to, I think, as part of what Mike was saying, you know, you form that team, but you also need to really write down a good plan. So, you know, a good solid business plan that incorporates many of the experts that he mentioned are two of the places where we start.
To piggyback off of that, I think a lot of times we see those business plans and they're well put together from a word standpoint. They can get their idea down on paper, but from our lender's perspective, having the numbers, the projected numbers, this is what we think we can do, is also very important to have in those business plans.
I'm kind of out of order. Oh, but
Sarah.
I will piggyback on what Richard said. Can you guys hear me? Yes. No? Okay. I will say, yeah, absolutely, to have those numbers and to be able to vet what your numbers are and your projection is really important. I think a lot of times people have projections that just don't meet the snuff of like a loan officer that sees numbers over and over again. And that's maybe okay, but you got to have the story that goes behind that. So either provide that data or like, I think it was Mike said, meet face to face. I think that initial meetings face to face can kind of tell your story in a way that's hard to do via email. I haven't had very many interactions yet where it's a Zoom meeting with a customer for the first time, but maybe that's coming. Who knows what the world is going to encumber, but I think that would be better than just email. There's something always missing in the email and where you're at in a situation. So some of the explaining a balance sheet and not missing things, or betting your own projection of how you came up with those numbers. It's kind of like you're selling yourself. You're selling your story and what you can do. And I'm sure that's true if you're going to the product center or you're coming to us for money or a different lender. That's all part of trying to be able to have us all buy into, yeah, this is a great idea. This is going to make you some money. Let's support you and be behind you on this.
Thanks, everyone. We've heard mention this evening from each of you at different times, sort of a piggyback experience in talking about your farm team or your team. You know, Mike sort of teed up who he would have on your farm team as you're starting a business and looking to have an active business plan projecting forward. Are we missing anyone from that team, from anyone's perspective outside of the individuals Mike mentioned? Or was that a pretty conclusive list?
I would say
list is spot. I think it's spot on, but maybe I'm missing somebody too. So I think that is what I would consider a financial team.
So Mike mentioned what? CPA, lender, attorney. Yeah.
Insurance agent.
And insurance.
Insurance, okay. I think depending on the type of farm operation you have, frequently we'll see where a vet might be on your team.
Right.
And then potentially a marketing specialist too, to help you market your, what you're producing.
I agree, Kate. The only thing I would add would be a peer. So someone who's done what you've done, or someone who's worked in the space that you're looking to expand into. We see a lot of peer-to-peer learning among many of our clients. And so, I think Farm Bureau provides a place for that. Lots of other farm organizations do. On the business side, if we're going to food shows or to a similar show where people can actually get together and talk about, they're on similar ground, they've had similar problems, and that network is really helpful too.
Good point.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking tonight or this afternoon, whenever folks are viewing us, but this evening for us, we're talking about, obviously folks in the agriculture industry and farmers. Generally speaking, sometimes we have trouble, and I'm going to use that in a we because I come from this world as well. My husband and I farm. I grew up on a farm, but sometimes we have trouble asking for help or looking for the right resources or connecting with the right individuals to have on our farm teams. Is there one piece of sage advice? Each of you have a different background that you come to the table with and different experiences, and you're from different organizations or spaces. Is there one piece of advice or is there one barrier that you see often within your work and your space? And is there a piece of sage wisdom that you would give to folks as they try to traverse that new terrain?
Yeah, I can start. I think mine would be, a lot of times the farming community can get caught up in wanting to farm like their neighbor or look like their neighbor or no competition. I think run your operation how your operation best needs it and how you're most comfortable. Don't get caught up in trying to keep up with everyone else. Just know what works for you.
I think one of the words that you said, Kate, was resources. And one thing, not necessarily on everybody's team, but particularly young farmers, a good piece is FSA. FSA can be quite a lot of help in kind of those barriers to enter the industry sometimes. They don't have a parent bringing them into the operation and co-signing on loans. FSA is a lot of times a way that a lender can do a loan in some type of a guaranteed situation. And also FSA offers direct loans as well, particularly to beginning young farmers. So that is definitely somebody else that I wouldn't say is on everybody's team, but it's definitely a needed resource that helps young farmers, beginning farmers enter into the industry, or if they've had some hard years, it gives them a way to still be able to have access to funds that they may not have without those guarantees. And so I think FSA may get a bad rep for being a government agency, but they really are a partner. And I think Greenstone definitely sees them as a partner. And we want to see those programs succeed and give people that start to be able to build up. Particularly, there's countless examples of beginning farmers that for whatever reason went with those programs, and they do have lower rates. There's some incentives to using them beyond doing all that fun paperwork.
Hey, it's maybe a little bit different. Which is the most successful entrepreneurs we see come through. I think of one group, we worked with a group that developed the gluten-free bar, which is national distribution now. They're tenacious. They don't give up. And we point them in with it. And they might make a mistake, but they're okay with it. They just keep pushing and pushing. And so I think from a personality, attribute of some of our most successful entrepreneurs, it's just that they get a hold of something and they don't quit.
That brings us to another topic. As we talk about financial planning and the general fundamentals there, if I'm a new, young, beginning farmer, and we've talked a lot about understanding your balance sheet and being prepared for tax season and some of the different pieces there, some revenue sources. What if I'm looking to business plan, right? We talked about attorneys being on your team. Are there any sage pieces of wisdom to be shared or resources that we know of, as subject matter experts in the industry when it comes to, I need to sit down and have a true, honest look at my balance sheet and think about, okay, so I'm just getting started. This is where I'm at today. This is where I want to grow to in the next 5 to 10 years. What's realistic? We talk about the farm team getting the right people at the table for those conversations. But how do I start to innovate, and how do I ensure that I've got those revenue sources that are really going to set me up for long-term success? if I don't have a dad or an uncle who's going to be on the farm with me?
I think your loan officer is a good start. I think them knowing what your goals are can kind of help you and lead you in that direction. And then when you want to buy that brand new piece of equipment, but you have these other goals over here, they can kind of say, well, I can do this, but how's that going to affect your cash flow for the next few years? Because you want to put up this building in 2 years and you got to pay this back in 5 years. And it, you know, it's a brand new combine and it's 300,000 or, you know, whatever if you know the whole picture, I think it's easier for a loan officer to be that person to go, well, you gotta pick what you want, or you gotta buy the used combine now so that you'll be able to do the other things later, and kind of know all your financial picture and where you want to go.
And part of having that long-term plan is being able to track your progress toward it, right? So that's keeping good financials, maybe getting with your lender and getting your historical trends every year, keeping that good, clean balance sheet at the same point every year to track those ratios that we talked about earlier, and just knowing where you are in the progress toward that future goal.
Yeah, and I was sorry. I just wanted to reiterate, you know, I do think that just a couple of quick points. I think, you know, probably not a huge secret, but a little bit of a way that we as accountants, or your lenders as well, we get to cheat a little bit because we see a lot of businesses and don't take that for granted. I think that sitting down with your banker, your accountant, advisor can really give you help you through that plan, because we've seen it a lot. We certainly don't know everything, but I think that's you know, there's value there. So you know, take advantage of it. A lot of experience on this call here.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say, you know, Richard and Sarah are talking like accountants themselves, and I think they were given a lot of good advice. And, you know, coming, you know, for your operation, if you have a plan for your operation and you have a good relationship with your loan officer, they are going to hold you accountable to that plan, and they're going to remind you about that when the shiny object is, you know, in front of you and you want to buy it. And they'll remind you, well, you know, this is something we talked about 2 years ago that you said you wanted to do. So I think having a relationship with your loan officer is critical.
In sort of a gist comment that I would culminate some of the feedback that I'm hearing here from you all as the subject matter experts is that relationship with your farm team is really important, right? Having a trusted relationship, one where you can come to them with new innovative ideas and they can help you vet those concepts, those thought processes, and truly do a gut check with you if your dream has changed in the last 365 days as a result of, you know, some new inspiration or maybe some financial changes on the farm that are out of your control, like a global pandemic in 2020. You know, being able to have those discussions with those folks who are your trusted resources is really important. In something that some of you have mentioned this evening too, is sort of a mentor-based program, which in the ag industry, I think we're really fortunate to have. Greenstone has a really well-known mentor program. Michigan Farm Bureau has the Young Farmer program in place that allows folks to connect with individuals and resources across the state who are in like situations and hopefully build those trusted relationships with their peers, like Molly mentioned, to really be able to have some brass tacks conversations and understand that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. To Richard's point, what your neighbor's doing is necessarily going to work on your operation. And so how can we do a great job of coming together collectively as those resources for individuals to provide a good scope and to set folks up for long-term success. And that's what each of you all have sort of provided your wisdom in these mini sessions leading into tonight's panel, as well as through this experience this evening. You know, I think it's a really awesome opportunity for us to talk a little bit. You know, I think I've got 2 prefab questions left in the bank here. But generally speaking, if you had one piece of advice that you could give anyone as they're looking to set up a mentor-based relationship, or to find or connect with a peer as they enter, you know, the agriculture industry and are trying to make sure they're making the correct financial steps, where would you direct them? Who would you connect them with?
Just one?
I'm going to have Mike go first.
Oh, nice. All right. All right. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to say 2 different resources, 2 resources that I've personally used over the last 10 years or so. And one would actually be the Young Farmer Program. So not technically a, you know, a mentor program, not structured as a mentor program, but I got out of college, joined a regional CPA firm, got involved in my county Young Farm Bureau or Young Farmers. And a lot of those relationships that I built didn't happen right away, but going to events and seeing the same people and over statewide, start asking them a lot of questions. And a lot of those guys and gals, I've got it, you know, I've got their numbers on my phone. I chat with them, you know, several times during harvest already, just see how things are going throughout the state, and you know, use a lot of those people as a resource. So I think that's one. And then one other piece of advice would be, don't just stick to this industry. So I have a peer group that I'm in, that it's actually more family business driven, but there's business owners in manufacturing, there's business owners in C-stores, gas stations, a lot of different industries, and we can learn a lot from them. And you're not, you know, you wouldn't always think that you might be able to, but just different management styles, different ways that they dive into and looking at their financials and how their business is doing. We all run into a lot of the same scary insurance issues and things like that. So don't hold yourself to this one industry.
I think Mike covered it. He did really well. I'm just going to jump in, and the only thing I think I can add really to what he said was, you know, I mentioned earlier some of the peer learning that goes on at trade shows that we're a little more involved in on our side, but I've seen similar things happen at like the Great Lakes Fruit and Vegetable and Farm Market Expo. So I think when there are educational opportunities like that, you're really sitting by people who are also interested in, and you know, you have an opportunity to meet people with similar interests there. But I don't think it can replace some of the long-term relationships that Mike mentioned.
Excellent. We've tossed around another member of the farm team, you know, from an attorney-based standpoint. Obviously, that's someone we're missing from our panel this evening, but each of you have a varied experience in the ag industry. Can you elaborate on why an attorney would be an important component for folks looking to enhance their business or to engage in the ag industry and beyond?
Yeah, I think an attorney is really important to be a part of the team for a couple different reasons. One, farmers tend to grow a network over time, and so succession planning is probably one of the most obvious that we think of, but I think it's handy to just have that relationship with an attorney. Sometimes it's just a piece of land comes up next door to you and you need help writing a purchase agreement. And so it may be something very simple for them to do, and they probably have a form, so to speak, but they'll ask a few things, and that may help. It's not always needed, but you can also they'll ask you some questions. How do you want to hold titles? Do you want to have a land holding entity? And you may not be quite to the succession planning part of it, but they'll start to ask those questions. Your lender might ask those questions of you and you get to that same conclusion. But I think having an attorney that you're not afraid to go to, those kind of simple transactions, their rates aren't astronomical for typically. I mean, find an attorney you trust, but like anything else, but there's some good attorneys out there that enjoy doing farm work and they're not taking advantage or charging you $400 an hour for those kind of services that, at the end of the day, they pretty much have a blank form that they just fill in a couple of different details for you. Or you bought that farm and now it has a rental house on it too, so you need to draw up a lease. Oh, let's call the friendly attorney. They'll probably help you with that. Those types of things just tend to happen given the industry that we work in.
Yeah, and I'll add, my favorite attorneys that I continue to refer clients to are those ones that are like, they're really part of the team, so they're good communicators. It's really, really important. And it's not just for attorneys, but I'm going to beat up on them because they're not on the call. But, if an attorney isn't talking with the whole team, there's things that can be missed. There's a lot of items that are pretty specific to agriculture, talking about buying land. Was it in PA 116? Are we transferring agreements? Are we splitting? Just being on the front end of things. And those attorneys who are like, okay, I know what you want. They turn around, they blast off an email to me. I love it. And it's not just because I want to bill 15 minutes to it. It's because I want to make sure that we've taken care of the client up front and we don't have a mess to deal with after the fact.
I'll just add, we work with attorneys when we have businesses come to us that are working on documents, especially we work quite a bit with new co-ops and so they help in, bylaws or making sure that everything's needs to be considered, and just having someone there. They're attorneys who specialize in cooperatives. Find an attorney who specializes in what you want to work on, and they're just. I love working with them, so it works out really great. But I think they're an invaluable part of the team, especially again our level of experience is on business formation.
Excellent. Thank you all for expanding on your thought process and your experience with the question. Another piece of this discussion, and Sarah, you brought up FSA, so USDA, FSA, NRCS, RMA, the alphabet soup that is some of that USDA, United States Department of Agriculture offerings and the support that they can provide new business owners, new young farmers, folks who are starting to move forward with their operations there. Can the folks in your seats, so depending on where you're at, can they help a new or beginning farmer who's coming to Mike for some tax consultation or to Greenstone for some lending expertise? Can you all help connect them with the appropriate folks that are a part of those different acronym agencies and help set them up for success and understand what resources, both financial and otherwise, might be available to someone?
Kate, I'll answer that question the way I guess as it comes up when I meet with clients. I know enough to be dangerous. It seems like every time I think I know a government program or what's offered, it changes a little bit. So I always try to give them, contact information and get them there, give them enough to ask the right questions, because that's really what it comes down to. Sometimes funding runs out or a program has deadlines that have passed. Or, FSA offers some great loans for building bins, for instance, but if you've already had a shovel on the ground, you're kind of out of the out of the picture for that. So you kind of have to work with their timing and their games and, you know, things like that. So not that it's a game, but sometimes it seems like it is. So I think all of that, there's enough to ask questions that I can give them and go in that direction. The same, I probably don't know as much about NRCS and some of those programs, but have dabbled a little bit here and there. I think those programs are always popping up, and like the EQIP dollars, I've seen it help out a lot of farmers. It seems like there's a lot of government money out there right now, but who knows how long that'll last or what different programs will come about in the next 5 to 10 years.
So that's actually an excellent segue for me to provide a small plug. So Farmers After Hours is a series that we hope to continue in early 2021. And the next sort of session of topics that we see being pertinent would be the coding of alphabet soup and trying to help folks connect with local resources and programs available through USDA, whether it's the Farm Source Agency or Natural Resource Conservation Services. They can connect with dollars that are appropriate or grants per se through like the Michigan Department of Ag and Rural Development, you know, to provide them with opportunities and access to apply for funds and really help them build that business model as they work their steps. They work through steps, folks, or, you know, looking at a 5 to 10 year business plan. So it's really helpful to know that you all can serve as resources to at least point them in the right direction. And then, you know, from a next step standpoint, those folks should be able to, when they connect with the right resources, help them through the processes that are in place to help them find success.
I'm sorry, I didn't jump in, but we don't have as much experience working with like FSA or some of the, I would call them more pure ag programs, but we have had several clients who've successfully written and received value-added producer grants. So often this would be like for additional processing that might take place on the farm. We worked with an onion processor, apple processor, or even a packing shed, for example. So, you know, we've worked more, I would say, kind of at the second tier of some of those grants, not directly into just agriculture, but in the space with value-added agriculture is where we have worked with them, along with USDA rural development in the state too. So I think that's a great topic for an upcoming webinar.
Thanks so much, Molly. With that, that concludes all of the questions that we had for you all. Really, panelists, we appreciate your time. The final question I would ask, and you all can chime in as you see fit, would be if you have any last tidbit or takeaway for folks who are joining us in this virtual format, please feel free to share that now.
It's a great time to be in food production, you know, especially if you're selling things that people can cook at home, because consumer demand for those items is just spectacular, and interest in locally produced items is as well.
I would say don't be afraid to ask questions, whether that's with your lender, your accountant, your anybody on your financial team or your mentor. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I think sometimes people get very protective of their stuff, but I mean, to really have a good relationship with your lender or your accountant or anybody on your team, you got to be able to open up and let them know. A lot of this industry and anybody on that list should be, what I want to say, very conscientious of your data. They're not going to go and gossip it at the coffee shop or something like that. These are members of your financial team that they're going to be in your best interest. And so don't be afraid to ask questions or to have things that are off the wall in your long-term plans.
That's a great answer. I'm going to just piggyback on that a little bit. I would also recommend that you look for the resources that are available because there are so many out there. And, like you said, your lender is a great resource. And just, asking them questions and keeping them in the loop and kind of in your back pocket is so valuable. And then just, there are so many resources with MSU Extension, with Michigan Farm Bureau. Kate mentioned they might be doing another series, and then, we already did a series on mental health. So there are so many resources that are typically free for farmers, no matter what level they're at, what commodity, what location. There's so many resources out there. And so I did want to just add a quick little plug on our Grow Forward grant program. So Greenstone does offer young, beginning, and small farmers. We offer our members up to $1,000 in educational programs, different seminar events. They can, be reimbursed for their educational receipts and whatnot. And then people who aren't our customers can still use this program, and they can use up to $500 a year. So there are so many resources available. Some are free, and then if not, there are also different grants and programs that you can, still access those really great resources too. So just keep looking.
Thanks so much, everyone. I don't hear any clamoring with additional final thoughts for our attendees and listeners. So I'll take this time to really say thank you to Greenstone for partnering with the Michigan Foundation for Agriculture and Farm Bureau family of companies on this series. Thanks so much to each of our panelists tonight for taking time away from your families, farms, and businesses to spend with us. It's greatly appreciated. These resources will make it into the hands and ears and eyes of folks across the countryside, and we're really excited to be able to provide those. So thanks so much for providing your time and your expertise in this subject matter. Our farm teams and our financial teams are super important components for folks to find long-term success. So thanks so much to each of you for joining this evening. Thanks to our participants for tuning in, and we look forward to hopefully meeting you in your space in the near future with additional iterations of the Farmers After Hours series.